Ah, good. I'm Jurkovic. Do come in and sit down, will you? This is episode 45 of the Dudley Simpson is Doctor Who project. I'm afraid security is necessary, but I find it rather amusing, don't you? Oh, you don't. Unlike in the new era of Who, and particularly the show's first soundtrack composer, Murray Gold, the Doctor's companions in the classic era rarely were honored with a musical theme of their own. Besides 80s companions Adric and Nyssa, Victoria was so honored, and honored generously. Check out episode 16 of the project to enjoy Simpson's musical painting of her. There's one more example which I present to you here. This one is slightly unusual in that it is music used in a scene introducing the companion, but is never used again. Consequently, it might not be strictly regarded as her theme. Season 7 of 1970 marks a new era for the program. Amongst the many changes were stories produced in color, with a U, a new Doctor, John Pertwee, and a new companion, Miss Elizabeth Shaw, who quickly became known as Liz. Liz Shaw was a somewhat unusual companion in that she was an actual scientist, closer to being the Doctor's intellectual equal than most companions got. A few minutes into Spearhead From Space, we first see Miss Shaw riding in the back of an important-looking car driven by a man in uniform. Presently, they turn off the main road into a garage. They are met with a guard who checks credentials and allows them through. As the music ends, we cut inside to an office where Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart of Unit receives word of Miss Shaw's arrival and rises from his desk to meet her at the door. Simpson's introductory theme has a jazzy, sophisticated sound, marking the arrival of Elizabeth Shaw, scientist. One other big change of Season 7 was that the Doctor was now exiled to Earth, with his knowledge of time travel blocked by the Time Lords. With no alien planets or future Earths to portray, Simpson may have taken his cue and written scores that used less electronics compared to some of his late 60s scores. Also, with this piece at least, a hint of jazz was thrown in, as seems to have been common in crime and mystery programs of the time, at least here in the States. Certainly in his next story, The Ambassadors of Death, represented in episodes 5 and 6 of the project, Simpson wrote one of the grooviest, jazziest scores of any of his stories. There isn't an absence of electronic sounds in Season 7, but in contrast to Ambassadors, Spearhead From Space is largely acoustic, with Elizabeth Shaw, scientist, completely so. Alto flute, muted trumpet, muted horn, vibraphone, guitar, and cello make up the instrumentation. Though the cello substitutes for an acoustic bass, this is a jazz orchestration, particularly with the use of mutes in the brass. The rhythmic feel of the piece is also jazz, in common 4/4 time, with typical swing-eighth rhythms throughout. Finally, the harmony is enriched with extensions of triadic harmony, adding sixths, sevenths, and ninths for a diverse harmonic palette. Liz's tune is in 2 parts, with a third that acts as a coda. The A section, with the alto flute melody quickly establishing E minor as our key, is 11 measures long. Those 11 can be understood as a normal 8 measures plus a 3-measure extension. The melody begins on an upbeat, that is, starting in the middle of the measure, in this case beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The shape of this line, featuring perfect fourths and fifths, is one that recurs a few times in the tune. Once the melody peaks on E natural, the accompaniment of vibraphone, cello, and guitar answers with rhythmic hits, echoing the syncopated arrangements of many jazz tunes before it. The harmony varies, but these exact rhythmic hits answer the melody 4 times, and these alternations make up the opening 8-measure phrase. In the first set of hits, the initial chord is a very bluesy B dominant 7 sharp 9. That's a chord we spent some time on in episode 21 of the project, where the major third and minor third coexist. Unusually, the bass note is not B, but D sharp. This could be explained by noting that the cello's lowest note is C natural, as heard in the next chord, which is C major 7. Adding to the density is the melody, so that a cell of E natural, D sharp, and D natural are all together here. Rather amusing. Once the harmony lands back on B7 sharp 9, the flute continues, with a line that falls down to the E natural below. This short figure has 2 elements strongly idiomatic to jazz. First, the use of the flatted 5th B-flat here, that's been associated with blues and jazz for over 100 years now. Second, a jazz ornament, a melodic elaboration made by adding or inserting neighbor notes to an otherwise simple line. So a melody like this turns into this. Ornaments were common in music of Bach or Mozart, and jazz has its ornaments as well. The harmony again replies to the melody, and Simpson echoes the blue 5th by starting with E minor and jumping to G minor, the minor third of which is B flat. The resolution is also cool, as the E minor harmony returns with an added major 6th. The melody reflects that opening line as it continues, with the first note E subbing for the original A. As it lands and holds on B natural, the sharp 9 chord answers, in a higher register this time, but now moves through D minor to C major 7. Next, the melody uses a pentatonic scale, though surprisingly based not on E minor, but B minor. As it lands on a beautiful F sharp, the 2nd or 9th of E minor, again the harmony responds, moving from E minor through C major to B minor. With another ornament decorating the line, the melody next resolves to E natural, and the harmony joins it, but not quite as expected. In a sense, the B minor is suspended, that is, held over, while the bass resolves to E natural underneath it. This creates a, yes, suspended chord, neither major nor minor, with the 2nd and 4th intervals creating a lovely sound, yet a little unsettled too. This resolution marks the beginning of the 3-bar extension I mentioned earlier, as the melody continues at once, using the same D natural, D sharp, E natural cell that features in the opening harmony. Almost as if resuming course, the harmony responds rhythmically again with the same 2 original chords, slightly reorganized in my arrangement for ease of performance. However, a 4th rhythmic hit allows a resolution to C major instead of B sharp 9. As this chord rings, a muted trumpet, I think it's a cup mute, but it could be a harmon mute, I'm not a trumpet player, takes over to play the melody of the B section, which lasts 7 measures. Again, on the upbeat, the melody is a transposition of the opening line, but starting on E. With the trumpet landing on the same E as the flute did, a muted horn joins the accompanying instruments in their more active rhythmic replies. The horn is the most prominent sound here, so my left thumb has the job of trying to sound important, but not as important as the melody. The trumpet line in this section remains entirely within the E minor pentatonic scale. The harmony is largely diatonic to E minor, although in contrast to the first section, does not spend as much time on that actual chord. The first responses use B minor, A minor, and land on C major, while the second uses a non-diatonic D minor before rising to E minor. The third responses are basically A minor 7, but instead of rapidly moving chords, the horn and vibraphones line shift over a stable A natural bass. After implying D dominant 7 during this passage, it resolves to a lovely F major. This itself resolves by half step down to another E suspended harmony in final response to the melody settling back on E as well. This final harmony is arpeggiated in the arrangement in deference to the strumming guitar chord heard on the soundtrack. The 8-measure coda section begins with the solo muted horn asserting a melody outlining E minor. Interestingly, Simpson stretches out this line with an unexpected irregular rhythm. Apart from the first note and last note, the 4 central notes are played in the space of 3 beats. You might hear that this melody sounds briefly out of tempo from the rest of the tune. This 4/3 rhythm has been heard once before in episode 33, but is much more subtle, to say nothing of it being easier for me to play this time. Now, the alto flute restarts the opening melody, though this is soon revealed to be a false start. The rhythmic responses also return, here alternating E suspended with A minor 7, giving us a sense of settling. The horn follows with another brief solo landing on B natural, then the flute concludes with a reprise of the bluesy ornament. Simpson, in a stroke of brilliance, throws here a harmonic curveball, echoing many jazz tunes before this, by coming to rest on something out of the blue, C sharp minor major 7. Although completely foreign to anything we've heard so far, this chord works because the flute's E natural is a common tone. It's the minor third of C sharp. The horn's B natural resolves up to B sharp, the major 7th. The muted trumpet has the last word with a sly line in a lazy triplet rhythm. It starts on what used to be the minor third of E, but that resolves up by half step to the perfect 5th of C sharp. To finish, the line hops up to the minor 7th, slightly clashing with the major 7th below, but resolves down to A sharp, the major 6th. Cool. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce you to Elizabeth Shaw, scientist. Episode 45 of the Dudley Simpson is Doctor Who Project. Thank you, precious Patreons. Join me. Make these videos happen and see them first. Patreon.com/Jess Jurkovic. I take tips, as any good jazz musician would. Go to ko-fi.com/Jess Jurkovic. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. See you next time.